Good afternoon. The regularly scheduled meeting of the Laguna Woods City Council on November 15, 2023 is now in session. Anybody who wishes to address the council will have an opportunity to do so. If you want to speak on an item that's on the agenda, you'll have a chance to speak at the time we hear that item. If you want to speak on an item that's not on the agenda, you'll have an opportunity during public comments at item 5. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll call, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Horn.
Here.
Councilmember McCary.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Present?
Mayor Pro Tem Hatch is present. And Mayor Connors.
Here. Councilmember Horn, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please cross your heart or salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We come now to presentations and ceremonial matters, and the first item we have is celebrating Nurse Practitioner Week. I'll start by asking our city clerk to read the proclamation.
Proclamation, City of Laguna Woods, Nurse Practitioner Week, November 12 through 18, 2023. Whereas nurse practitioners serve as trusted frontline providers of health care for patients in California, and whereas nurse practitioners are advanced practice registered nurses who have advanced clinical education and training building upon their initial registered nurse preparation, and whereas there are 270,000 licensed nurse practitioners in the United States and over 30,000 nurse practitioners in California, providing primary, acute, and specialty care to patients of all ages and walks of life. And whereas nurse practitioners diagnose, treat, and prescribe medications and other treatments to patients through a caring, patient-centered, holistic model of care. And whereas over 1 billion patient visits occur annually to nurse practitioners across the United States. And whereas 5 decades of research demonstrates the high quality of care provided by nurse practitioners. Now therefore be it resolved that the Laguna Woods City Council does hereby proclaim November 12 through 18, 2023 as Nurse Practitioner Week in the city of Laguna Woods in recognition and honor of the countless contributions that nurse practitioners have made over the past half century and will continue to make to personal health and well-being, dated this 15th day of November, 2023.
Thank you. We happen to have a nurse practitioner right here on the dais. Councilmember McCary, you want to say anything about this?
Absolutely. Yes. I don't know what else I can say other than what Yoli read in that proclamation. That pretty much sums up the hard work and the dedication and the commitment that nurse practitioners make to their careers, to their patients, and to life in general. So I'm honored to be amongst you, even though I'm not active. It's just an honor. Thank you.
I'm really grateful to all the nurses because whenever I go to the doctor, it's the nurses I interact with and that respond to me, that help me, that answer my questions, and I'm very grateful for them. Thank you for all you do. You really are heroes. Thank you.
Well, thank you for agendizing this.
You got your mic on?
Carol.
I did. It was Cynthia.
Are your ranks diminishing? Everything I read is that nursing now is not a difficult thing, but filling the slots are difficult. Is that what you found in your field as a practitioner? That's a question. That means one of you has to get up and answer up here. Who's most comfortable?
I don't mind talking. Should I just go here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi there, I'm
Christina Fortes. I'm the current president of the OC chapter of CANP, which stands for California Association for Nurse Practitioners. Thank you all for allowing us to be here today. To answer your question, Mr. Hatch, I serve as an educator. I work at Cal State Fullerton and also at the UCI. We do have quite an interest in nursing and nurse practitioner, but I think with all of the things that came with COVID, we learned a lot, and we lost a lot of good nurses and NPs to either other professions or to retirement. And we are at a downslope trying to fulfill those slots. But we have great students who are ridiculously smart and so excited to join our profession on the rise. And a lot of us are still here. Our numbers are growing. Our numbers are growing. In California, we've grown 10,000 in the last 10 years in nurse practitioners. So we're here to stay. We also have, if I may, Governor Gavin Newsom just signed in a law, AB 890, allowing us to have more independent practice, not changing our practice, but allowing what we've been doing, just more operating in independent, whereas before AB 890, we had to be under some kind of directorship of a physician. And it's a very long, I won't tell the whole story, but it's going to be a long rollout of this new designation for us. But we're very excited to have it and join the 24 other states that already have independent practice.
Do we have many here serving in the village? If you know?
I don't know that.
Okay.
I know that I am a proud daughter of a 90-year-old gentleman who lives in the village for many, many years. I do see nurses coming and going, but unfortunately, I don't know if they are nurse practitioners or RNs or home health aides.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
To understand your field, pardon me, if you'll, I was going to ask a couple of questions. If you're the spokesperson, unless someone else wants to add in too. So what you have done is you have a degree, and then you've gone beyond that degree and have additional training. Is that a 2-year usually additional to the degree program?
That's a great question, actually. So all of us start as nurses, baccalaureate prepared
Right.
nurses.
So you have a BS probably.
Yes, and then we go on for our 2-year for a master's with nurse practitioner. Our accrediting agencies are now pushing more for the doctorally prepared.
For the what?
Doctorally prepared.
Okay.
So myself and among other people also will have a doctorally prepared. So we are called a doctor of nursing practice. So we are clinical-based doctorates. So our titles are doctor, but how we not try to cause confusion with our physician counterparts is we say, my name is Dr. Christina Fortes. I am a nurse practitioner.
Right. Now, could you find also that artificial intelligence would move you ahead too, because not that it would take so much of your, would it be possible, it seems to me it could be possible, that let me think of how I want to word this,
Sure.
that testing results would be evaluated perhaps by an AI program, which would also move the group to another level because you wouldn't be doing it anyway. And we know in the past, by the time we start implementing these programs, they are far more correct more often than not. I'm thinking about eye surgeries and even cancer tests and skin tests and so forth. How do you think that might figure into your field too?
Well, it's something as a professor that we actually are addressing right now. AI has a wealth of opportunities. There's also a wealth of kind of getting around things. Like when we want to have students present their scholarly work, we don't want them necessarily using AI.
Right.
We want it to use as a guide, but not as replacing of their own volition of what their knowledge is. This is the other part, though. With AI, it does create more of a help, for lack of a better word, in making sure that we are trying to be as best practitioners as we can. So I think we have to look at it very carefully on both ends of that sword, looking for its good, but also minding where it may try to take over. We're never going to lose human touch.
Right.
And at the center of this, we are nurses to start. And that's why we are the most trusted profession, really, in the nation. And it's that caring, humanistic approach that I think really sets us out,
It's
that
amazing.
AI can't take away from.
It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Back in the 90s, if I called my doctor to make an appointment, they'd say, do you want to see the nurse practitioner or do you want to see the doctor? And I always said, oh, I want to see the doctor. And I was living in San Francisco, and I had a cousin in Sacramento, and she stayed at my house several days a week while she was getting her master's at UCSF. And she was incredibly smart and incredibly driven and incredibly hardworking. And when I saw what it took for her to become a nurse practitioner, now I'm always glad to see the nurse practitioner.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Thank you
And
for that.
one of the things I know that I'm sure you've heard before, but it's important to this community where people are more frail, is that doctors treat diseases and nurses treat patients.
And we marry the two. We come in the middle of both of those.
But you spoke of the personal touch, and I think that's what we get from our nurse practitioners.
Yeah, thank
So-
you for that. Of course, this is my colleague Priscilla.
Right
I
ahead.
just want to let you know I'm a nurse practitioner who's been serving Laguna Woods for about 20 years.
Wow.
And it's just been a privilege to, I'm a geriatric nurse practitioner, and it's been such a joy to treat them. And I used to do house call visits too for the ones who've been homebound, as well as those who are in assisted living. And it was such a joy to see this population be served, because so many of them are homebound or just frail, as you mentioned. And to have a nurse practitioner do house calls or be able to service this, kind of neglected population, it was just a privilege to serve them, and it was just a joy. So I just want to let you know, we're hidden here in Laguna Woods, and so we're just trying to reach all our elderly or young elderly or older elderly to make sure they get their appropriate preventative health care to keep them healthy.
Well, we're glad to have you here. It's good to know you're among us.
So thank you.
One final, while you're both there,
Oh, and Mary Ann.
we have our battalion chief in the fire department who is over all of the, many of South County. And do you work with fire?
I've met some of his colleagues as they come and visit my patients.
You do work with the fire department then on calls that they make, I suppose. You're there. Yeah. Anything you want to say, Chief?
We agree.
Mary Ann, do you wish to say anything? Or have they said it all for you?
My name is Miriam Gulreis. I'm a resident of our city of Irvine. Thank you for having us here today. I've been practicing for about 8-9 years, and I've worked in so many different fields as a nurse practitioner. And in the last year or 2 years, I decided to open a practice in mental health, focusing in adolescents, young people, older people of all ages. And I've truly enjoyed doing this new journey and new thing that I'm doing in my life. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you all.
Okay.
One other thing occurred to
Don't go
me.
away.
Sorry about this. So you are involved in continuing education then in your career, are you not? Like lawyers and doctors themselves, so you...
Absolutely.
And you keep right on the cutting edge then, don't you, of new techniques and so forth?
Absolutely, yeah. We're constantly attending conferences, reading articles, or continuing education credits, making sure we're up to date on all the evidence-based practice and treatments.
It hasn't aged any of you, which is very good.
I'm afraid it is. Thank you.
Okay, stay where you are.
Okay.
Someone want to move the proclamation?
I'll move the proclamation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let's take a moment for a photograph.
Okay.
Everybody's good?
You guys aren't smiling.
Oh, wait. He wants the chief in the group. One more.
Could you hunker down and not make me look like a midget?
All right, everybody looking straight ahead. Thank you.
Here you go.
Thank you.
So you took about 4 before and 2 after with the chief, so you can decide which ones you want.
Okay, our next item is an update on the library, and I know we've seen new concrete being poured, now being rained on. Want to give us a report, Chris?
I would love to. We are nearly complete with the concrete pour. There was going to be some last pouring today of the red color, but you may have noticed it is a little wet outside for concrete. So the goal is that the final concrete pour will take place end of this week, maybe on Friday, although there's also rain forecast for Friday, so it may end up being early next week. But once that's poured, it'll just be a couple more days before the patio should be okay to walk on. It's curing right now. You noticed earlier in the week it was covered in like a blue plastic to keep things from falling in it as it dried, so that's been removed. Aside from that, we've told the library that they should start making plans for moving into the space. We're still waiting on a timeline for exactly what that will look like for them. And then kind of in concert with that, we're anticipating scheduling some sort of a dedication type ceremony, community gathering event opportunity at the library. With the holidays coming up and with the legislative session starting again, it's going to be a little tricky to schedule it. There are a couple of state legislators, Assemblywoman Cotty Petrie Norris, Assemblywoman Diane Dixon, and Senator Min, who would like to attend. So I can't promise exactly when that ceremony is going to occur, but I think what we've talked about internally is let's not hold up the opening of the library at this point based on that. So we're anticipating allowing the library to move in and do a soft opening of sorts, and then following up with a dedication ceremony and with the unveiling of the Founders Wall plaque as well. So as soon as we have a better sense of timing, we'll get it to you, but we should be, it is 90% done right now. It's 2 panels of the red concrete that need to be poured, then everything needs to cure. There's some cleanup work, which is what they're out there doing today, but then we should be good to go. So that's my update.
Thank you. Come now to item 5, public comments. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the council on matters that are not on today's agenda? Have you received any written comments?
No.
Apparently not. Okay. Then public comments are closed. Now, the consent calendar. The consent calendar contains routine matters that are normally approved by one vote. If anybody wishes to remove an item for separate discussion or separate vote, now is the time to do so. Okay, can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move the
I'll move.
consent calendar.
A second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Thank you. We have no public hearings scheduled today, so we come to city council business. And I'm going to ask our city manager to talk to us about the zoning code amendments.
Yes, and I'll keep my comments brief. We had the full presentation, and the public hearing at the October 18th meeting. But we are here today to consider the second reading and adoption for an ordinance that would make a variety of changes to the Laguna Woods zoning code. As we discussed last time, there's really two reasons for that. One is there are two programs in the general plan housing element that require us to make some amendments to the zoning code. On one hand, to make sure that we're complying with things like the California Employee Housing Act, and on the other hand, to conform to more conventional state housing law. Those two programs, 1.2.6 and 1.3.4, the council has made previous amendments to those. We expect with the amendments before you today that we'll be able to cross those two programs off. Those will be some of the earlier programs completed in the housing element, but this should bring us to the finish line on the amendments that we're aware of that the State Department of Housing and Community Development would like to see. And then the second piece of it is to memorialize interpretations related to where residential uses are allowed in the city. There were some blank spots in the open space passive and open space recreation tables of permitted use. So we've made some clarifying changes there. That kind of goes in concert with some of the changes that we made related to the housing element, that we needed to make very clearly that we were delineating where housing is allowed as a permitted use or a principal use of a property versus where housing is allowed as an accessory use, meaning accessory to a principally permitted use, or where housing is prohibited in general. So we made some of those changes. Additional information in the agenda report, like I mentioned, we had the public hearing at the last meeting. So the recommendation today would be for the City Council to approve second reading and adopt an ordinance read by title with further reading waived, titled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, amending sections 13.08.010, 13.10.020, 13.12.020, 13.13.020, and 13.26.010 of Title 13, Zoning, of the Laguna Woods Municipal Code, and determining and certifying that the ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. With that, there's an opportunity today for public comments, and then I'm happy to respond to any questions as well.
Does anybody from the public want to make a comment about our new zoning ordinance? Hearing none, public comments are closed. Any member of the council need to make any comments? I just want to thank the city manager and staff for relentless work on the endless task of keeping our codes in compliance with state law and making sure all of our cross-references continue to remain accurate and clarifying language so that the same word means the same thing in different places. And with that, I will take a motion to approve the recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Where is the street racing ordinance? Is that still?
It's on hopefully the next agenda.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Then we come to the next item, which is the design standards.
Okay.
Go ahead, Chris, at your convenience.
Okay, so this is also a opportunity for a second reading of an ordinance that was introduced and approved for first reading at the October 18th meeting. A public hearing was conducted at that time as well. Just very brief background. As a refresher, the current fiscal year's 2023-25 budget and work plan includes a project for the city to adopt objective design standards that would be applicable to new development projects, meaning new construction projects, or certain types of significant redevelopment projects. The work plan item specifically contemplates architectural and landscape standards. What we have done with the ordinance before you today is what, at least at the staff level, we're viewing as a first step in that direction. We wanted to make sure that we had something on the books sooner than later, recognizing that the broader process of retaining an architect to work directly with staff and with the council to craft more comprehensive standards would take a little bit of time. We didn't want to let that time go by and have projects come before us that didn't have any standards whatsoever, really, to speak of. So the proposed amendments are the first step towards that. As I mentioned at the last meeting, we anticipate that there's going to be a second interim ordinance that staff will submit to you in the next couple of months that would continue to pull some of the standards that we have elsewhere in the municipal code into this single chapter for ease of reference, and also build out some of the preliminary standards that we've included. And then kind of concurrent with that, we will be releasing a request for proposals to solicit proposals from consulting architects that would be able to work with the council and work with staff to craft language that would be both understandable by developers and by design professionals, but also get to the heart of what the council is seeking to do here, which is provide some guardrails for the look and feel of future construction. That RFP we expect to release after the first of the year. Once we get proposals back on that, depending on the number of those proposals, we anticipate either asking the council to appoint an ad hoc committee to participate in the interviews for them, or alternatively bringing them all before the city council as a whole. Again, it kind of depends what we end up getting. The types of architects who do this work of developing design standards, it's a little bit of a niche practice. There are lots of architects out there, but a lot of them really, focus on designing buildings. But there are a number of architects that have developed objective design standards for surrounding cities and other cities in the Southern California area that we'll look to directly solicit proposals from, and then it'll of course be open to any architect who's interested in throwing their hat in the ring. And then maybe just my final note is that what we're trying to achieve here, state law with respect to certain types of housing projects requires that the city only apply objective design standards to those buildings. So in the past, cities would do things like you'd submit a housing application to build a condo complex. It would go before a design review board of some kind, and they would have an opportunity to provide more qualitative input on the project. State law being what it is, objective design standards are really the limit that the city can require of developers for certain types of housing projects in the future. And so given that the general plan housing element creates opportunities for that type of development, having objective design standards on the books specifically for those type of projects will help to protect the city's interests and prevent the type of maybe monolithic boxes of glass and steel that you might see in other jurisdictions. So anyway, that's my brief commentary on it. Recommendation today is to approve second reading and adopt an ordinance read by title with further reading waived, titled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, adding Chapter 11.10 to Title 11, Planning and Development of the Laguna Woods Municipal Code, establishing objective design standards for certain new development and redevelopment projects, and determining and certifying that the ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. With that, opportunity for public comments, and then I'm happy to respond to any questions as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to be heard on this matter? Welcome, Ms.
Since
Fresh.
I'm the only one here.
You can
However,
represent the public.
I really want to compliment you for following, because if you recall, this came up when we were approving that medical building. And I think that this is a step forward. And I'm pleased to see that you're moving in that direction so that ultimately we don't end up with a situation where somebody comes in and wants to design a building that just doesn't even fit within the community or in our area. So thank you very much for proceeding and moving forward with this. I look forward to seeing the final document. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
I had a comment, and as Chris, thank you for the thoroughness of this report. And actually, I was thinking of Catherine as you were reading it, and I was thinking of Catherine as I was going through this. And I appreciate Catherine. I appreciate you bringing up this issue back when we were having this discussion. So I just really appreciate how it's coming together. Thank you.
Chris, this doesn't indicate that it's on or off.
It's on.
It's on.
It's
And
hard
I
to see the
understand
light.
that. All right. It seems to me that height is a major issue here. We don't have height in our city. We have the three-story buildings in the village. But I was at, at an office that was overlooking Laguna Hills this morning, and that magnificent view that they had that overlooked the freeway and the mountains back here, and then the area that is going to be developed with housing and other things. Do we have some flexibility in monitoring size going upward, like a 7-story housing facility? What's your
So
thought
there's,
on that?
yeah, sure. There's a couple of safeguards in place, but I'll be candid and say that, especially for housing projects, the city will be required by state law in many instances to provide density bonuses to developers. In many cases, that results in buildings significantly taller than you might otherwise like to see. But again, it's a product of state law, not the city. We have the ability to set height standards. We also, with respect to housing, remember we talked about densities during the housing update process. So densities are kind of a natural control on height. Developers don't want to build a bigger building than they have to, right? It's a cost-benefit equation for them. And so depending on the size of the parcel and the density that we've allowed housing to be built to, it may or may not lend itself to extremely tall buildings. There are 4 different overlay zoning districts that are called for in the housing element. The highest density is 30 to 50 units per dwelling acre, which is a lot. Those are in areas that are generally speaking not immediately adjacent to existing residential areas. But even those lower density areas, if they apply for and we're required to provide a density bonus, those developments can get pretty tall. I hate to punt and say it's really a matter of what walks in the door in terms of an application, but it genuinely is. I mean, there are some developers who want to build smaller complexes for whatever reason, and then there are developers that want every conceivable unit that could fit on that property, and state law is kind of lopsided in favor of allowing that, even if it means exceeding height standards. So we certainly have some height standards already in our municipal code, and these objective design standards will build out a little bit more of that, but I can't guarantee you that, at least with respect to housing, we're going to be able to enforce it each and every time. With other types of development, absolutely. With office buildings, those sorts of things, we can absolutely enforce height standards. With higher density housing projects, it gets difficult.
And let's suppose that on Moulton, we do have some high density possibilities or requests, and that impacts traffic. So EIRs can't support SCANA. We can't use that as a tool.
Yeah, no.
So
There is a EIR in development right now for the actual rezoning of the 17 potential housing sites. That will look at traffic, but generally speaking, again, the way the state has gone, they're requiring that you permit these by right, which means without further
anything,
environmental
right,
analysis.
right.
So traffic isn't, the way that traffic is required to be analyzed these days also generally lends itself toward most development being okay. Not really a off-ramp for you.
All right, do you have a final word of encouragement for us? Like when are we going to be ready with our full package of goodies?
Well, so the objective design standard, the comprehensive version of it, I think will somewhat hinge on how much time we spend going back and forth with whatever architect is ultimately selected.
All right.
And I think, not to put the ball in your court, but one of the things that I think will be challenging is giving the architect clear direction on what the 5 of you are looking to accomplish. So we're going to, at the staff level, build out the bones of the design standards like we've done with this initial cut of it. But the actual, like, putting into words what you want development to look and feel like, that's going to mean the 5 of you needing to get on the same page. So we've had, brief glimmers of what that might look like, but that's the wild card in this process, I think.
So do we have a target date that we all ought to be looking toward, say, mid-year?
So I think that we will have proposals from architects in February, release in January. So I think very likely this probably comes back to you in the March timeframe, somewhere in that ballpark. It depends a little bit on what we receive in terms of proposals, but I would say, March, April, that timeframe. If we only receive a handful of proposals, it's a lot easier to move through that process. But if for some reason we receive a great number of interested architects, it might take a while to.
All right, and once again, what are the architects here to do?
So the architects, I think, let me just give you an example, and I'm going to use Catherine as the case study here. So Catherine, at the meeting, I think where we were talking about the medical office, you referenced the San Clemente design standards, and they have, for different portions of their city, they've decided that there needs to be a Mediterranean influence or a Spanish colonial influence. So I think where it starts is making sure that we have an idea of whether it's citywide or in pockets, what the overarching design scheme is. And then once you have that, the way that this has worked in other jurisdictions, the architects present you with some visual aids, material boards, examples of comparable structures. And it's a lot of you telling them what you like and what you don't like that fits your vision. And then they take that.
We're talking about the exterior only.
Yes, we're talking about the exterior. And then they take the likes and dislikes of the council and they try to distill it down into guidance that an architect or other design professional working on a private project would be able to look at and say, okay, this I understand, I can design a building to this. Saying just that we want something to be Spanish colonial or Mediterranean or ranch or whatever the style is, that's still open to a lot of subjective interpretation.
And do we have latitude to go that far?
Yep.
To say we can't go to say we want single-story Spanish Mediterranean architecture. We can't do that.
So you have pretty broad discretion to say this is what you want the city to look and feel like. Where it gets a little bit trickier when we say objective, with respect to the state laws that govern that for housing developments, objective means that if the 5 of you are each architects on your own housing development projects, you're all building your own condo complex. If I give you a list of design standards from the city, the 5 of you have to be able to interpret them apples for apples. So it can't be something that is open to interpretation. It's something that there's either a benchmark or a criteria that you can refer to and say, okay, it says that I need, S-shaped clay tiles on the roof. I know what an S-shaped clay tile is. I can go out and buy that. That is an objective design standard. What you can't say is the roof needs to be Spanish in style. That means something different to all 5 of you, right? So that's where we have to try to get past we like a general Spanish aesthetic or a ranch aesthetic or something and drill down to what does that actually mean? And that's how you get the latitude to be able to say, we want it to be Spanish at the end by saying these pieces have to be a part of the development.
And if the existing platform that's out there is so eclectic and diverse, that creates a problem in and of itself, doesn't it? Because you can't come in and
I don't know if it creates a problem.
alter the.
Well, there
is no look, I guess I'm saying.
Well, there's a realistic part of this that is all zoning in general.
Right.
It's a long game, right? Yeah. You can create long-range plans, but it takes many, many years to see them actually borne out and brought to fruition. And so what you would see is like if you took a really hard edge and you said everything is going to be Mediterranean style,
Yeah.
over time, things would turn over that direction. You can't compel somebody to retrofit their existing building, but you can control what it looks like going forward. But it's also, to your point about eclecticism, design standards don't have to be the same for everywhere.
No.
There are cities that have different design standards for residential versus non-residential properties. There are cities that have design standards based on geographic area. Laguna Hills is a good example of that. They have some design standards that divide their city into, I think, 5 or 6 different areas, and some of those areas have ranch aesthetics. Some of those have Spanish aesthetics. And so there's different design standards based on the part of town that you're in. All of that is a conversation that you'll want to have with the architect so they can get a sense of what we're trying to get to. Is it a uniform set of standards so that everything in the city looks the same? Or is it a set of standards that says maybe residential looks this way and maybe there's more flexibility in the commercial sector, or less flexibility in the commercial sector and more flexibility in the residential sector? It's all, you have a pretty broad canvas with it. My advice to you through the entire process is going to be make sure it is as objective as possible so that there's minimal opportunity for a developer to argue that your design standards veer off from what state law says that, you know,
And
they
we're an
actually have to
island.
listen to.
We're an island. We don't care what the rest of the world around us looks like.
I think that's again up to you. I mean, if you do care what the rest of the world
All
looks
right.
like and
So
the
that there is
transition
flexibility
between it,
there. Okay.
you can definitely tier off of what is adjacent to the city and say,
All right.
you know, you got to marry the two, right? This thing is entirely up to you. As long as they're objective, you can decide that you want Baroque Gothic architecture throughout the city. It's all in your court.
I can use blue chalk on the
Yes.
blackboard or
Absolutely.
red chalk. Okay, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Okay.
It's not a few facts that are interesting to think about. Number one, the village spent millions of dollars, and probably tens of millions of dollars on ADTs. That was an average daily trip when we had to come in and or change everything. And I remember a real strong argument when we tried to change that. Some people said, oh no, we'll lose our ADTs. ADTs mean nothing today. You can build whatever you want. You don't even have to have parking. Number two, that's a fact that we spent all that money for something that isn't even in effect now. So probably at least 10, and I would say maybe 12, Chris, do you think?
I don't have any firsthand knowledge of what they spent, but I can tell you that there were many iterations and many versions of consultants spent on that, for sure.
Lots of money over something that makes no difference and didn't. Okay, there's one fact. Fact number two, high density is not healthy. The rate of TB is up, it's higher than COVID, and it's in high density areas. Go online and you'll see where it's high. So high density is not good for people's health in general. I'm using that as one example, but there are others. Number three, these are all factors that I see in this. You have someone telling you what can be built in your community today. A group of people who make up their minds, this is our community, it's not their community, and I think it should come back to the community. The communities get to determine what is good for them. Along the ocean, perhaps, you might want one thing. Out in the desert, you might want another. And to think they're all the same and one size fits all is not good thinking, and there are all kinds of unintended consequences, which I will refer to again later. Number three, in the community, I think our lack of having control of what can happen in your community, particularly with housing, particularly when our city doesn't own any land anyway, so we're talking now about private housing. That's a very troubling aspect. I think it is a good idea to look. When it comes to taste, it gets really tricky, I think, because what one person prefers in design, one person may like. I look at the issue, I guess, when I'm talking about design, not in terms of do I like the design particularly, but how extreme is it and how well is it going to age? What did not age? The 60s look didn't age well. I think we'll all agree to that one. Where do our oldest buildings look in the village? That really strong 60s look, and I happen to have one of those units that has that look, and you have to kind of try to mask it because it didn't age well. So I think having something that is not, as you said, subjective, it's objective, and it's trying to balance, because people have rights. We don't want to take away their rights, but we also have rights personally that that you can't come in, buy the property next door, and build your 15-story, whatever it is, and ruin someone else's property. So these things are complicated, and I do agree that they should be objective. We should be able to meet them, and there's something to think on. Thank you.
There is a song that was very famous that we all are old enough to remember. I think Bob Dylan wrote it, if I remember. You remember the song?
Times they are a-changing.
That all of this that we're talking about is blowing in the wind. It really is. So,
We can create a lot of wind, right?
all right, so then that's what we want to do.
Okay. I want to thank staff for getting us some interim standards so that we've got something that we can rely on right now, even if they are not as sophisticated as what we might end up with. Just in the last year or so, we have been confronted with building plans for the medical building office, a new Starbucks, renovations to the Helm Center, and all of these things have been going on, and we have had no opportunity to say, you know, we'd like that to look a little bit different. And I believe by the time we get through the architects and everything else, it'll probably be a year before we get our more permanent design standards together. And I know there are other centers, other changes that are pending, and people are thinking about making modifications to their property. And if we can get this on the books, that'll help us.
There is one project that is aborting, or at least in the closet right now in the village, and that's the possibility of a new building to house the people that work up in the broadband and things like that. And because United can't make its mind up on anything, the frustration for the staff is that we aren't getting housing workspace for scores of people that are, so we're renting space in the.
I think that's security.
Around,
Yeah.
It's security, I think.
Yeah, security's up there, and landscaping is up there, and so they want to build a building. So we.
Oh. And for us, that raises the question of, do we want the same standards for a building on Moulton Avenue as we want for a building way up at the top of the hill that nobody sees except the people that work there? So I think the conversation in the past has been that we think we would be happy with something that was mission style or Spanish style or old Mexican style. And I suspect people have in their mind columns and arches and red tile roofs and stucco. A lot of people want to build something that's edgier and more contemporary. And I see that right here in this shopping center that's been redesigned. And they have brown wood and stainless silver borders and light thin rocks in a facade and brown tan river rocks in a facade and brown paint and tan plaster and all of that stuff just juxtaposed. And I think that is kind of the trend in buildings, to chop them up into a lot of diverse things. And if you go with something like we may be thinking about, or like here, you have a kind of a classic look. It could be pastoral or suburban look, which we are. And it could seem dated unless they have a good architect to put it together. At any rate, since it's going to be a while since we have complete standards, I think it's a good thing to get something in place now, because although we don't see a lot going on here, there are things going on here. So, thank you. Anything else?
I just have a question. Can we have a different standard for residential buildings and a different standard for commercial? Okay.
Yeah, you can get as granular as you want to. You can have a different standard street by street if you would like. I mean, it's entirely up to the council, and I think that's actually maybe an exercise we can go through earlier on, not necessarily contingent on the architect, is figuring out what level you want this to be at, right? Do you want it to be as granular as block by block, or do you want it to be tied to zoning districts? Do you want it to be tied to the mayor's point, do you want different standards for what's visible from public right-of-way, meaning Moulton, El Toro, Santa Maria, than streets that might be, several deep and outside the public view? There's all sorts of different ways that you could approach it, but that might be an interesting way to start the discussion, to at least talk about the scale of the project you're interested in.
Thank you.
Okay. Have you read this ordinance yet?
I've read it, so you can take a motion.
Okay. Will someone move the ordinance?
I'll move the ordinance.
I second.
Moved in second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Our next item is the city council meeting schedule.
So I realize we have had a number of additional meetings this year, and I appreciate everyone bearing with us on that. If it's agreeable to the council, we'd like to set up a meeting for the week before your next regular meeting. We have 2 construction projects that are out to bid right now that will be back in time for the council to consider awarding contracts that week before your next regular meeting. Doing that would be hugely helpful to us because it would allow us to get those contractors under contract before the end of the year, rather than waiting until after the holiday closure to get them under contract. We're trying to move the projects along as quickly as we could. So I don't expect that it would be a particularly long meeting, but I do think it would help us just with workflow a bit. So just as an initial idea, I wanted to throw out 2 o'clock on December 14th, which is the week of the 11th, sorry. Yeah. No. I mean, we could meet on the 11th, but the 2 o'clock on the 14th. Okay. How about our second choice would be 2 o'clock on the 15th, which is Friday.
Actually, I deliver Meals on Wheels and I volunteer at the Mac Lab.
What time are you done with that?
I'm through at 3.
3? We could do it later. I mean, I don't think this is going to be a long meeting. It's just.
3 o'clock on Friday the 15th?
Would 3 o'clock be okay?
And this is going to, excuse me, go ahead.
I'd rather do it later in the week because the bids close the end of the previous week.
So what is it, 3?
So if we could do 3 o'clock on the 15th, if that works for everybody?
Yeah, I'm having cataract surgery on one eye on the 12th.
You should be good by then.
But I should be good by then since there's no
It's
blood
amazing.
in.
I know. You'll be ready that afternoon.
No, I want to take time. Don't give me that ready that
I
afternoon.
can't believe how fantastic that is.
That's good.
And there's AI.
No objections to. Okay.
No.
So then the motion would be to schedule an adjourned regular meeting of the City Council for December 15th at 3 p.m. at Laguna Woods City Hall, 24264 El Toro Road, Laguna Woods, California, 92637.
3 o'clock on the 15th.
Do we have a motion?
I move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
On the 3.
Come to item 8, reports and comments on meetings attended and other things of interest. We're going to start with the Coastal Greenbelt Authority. Have you guys met lately?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Authority met last week, and just a few highlights. The Laguna Canyon Foundation interim Executive Director Jackie Cordero has accepted a position with the City of Avalon as their Public Works Director. So, and she will stay until the end of the year. But the foundation has been on an executive director search for a while, and it looks like they may have some good candidates, and they hope to have someone in December. The Laguna Beach open space update. there was a email from the director, and he says that the Laguna Canyon Road Improvement Project, the city's consultant is working on coordination and mapping. The consultant has already obtained the necessary encroachment permits to perform further site investigations necessary for the design. And they're still open for some public outreach and some more public comments on it. And as we were just talking about design, Laguna College of Art Design is embarking on adding a student center to the college right now. And the Laguna Woods Planning Commission has approved a design to add the student center. And the design, as it's been approved, is probably going to take about 5 years for it to actually come to completion. But they have been in talks with the city of Laguna Woods in terms of building this student center, adding on to the college campus. And I believe that's the most significant updates I have.
Thank you. How about the fire authority? What does the fire authority have to tell us?
Do we have anything that is pressing right now, Chief? That they ought to be aware of? We have negotiations for a facility down in either San Clemente for the hand crews or Rancho. The city of San Clemente is going to give us a 99-year lease for $1 a year to lease about 5 acres of raw property now for this housing facility and preparation for the hand crews to go out. And the Rancho Mission Viejo is going to sell us a piece of property of about the same for a couple of $1 million at least.
These are in addition or and/or?
This is and/or,
Okay.
for either one. And the board is coming up tomorrow night to again discuss and give the guidelines. They're currently housed in a canyon somewhere up this way, and it's not suitable housing for these people to work out of and even to live in. So that is the big thing coming up tomorrow night. But then I have, take one of each. Remember we talked about the chalk walk? Well, this is a brief announcement. If you go on Laguna Miguel's stake and chalk walk 23, you can see a video of what it's like.
Does it have the
when
dates?
you've been there, and,
Right.
and I think maybe you have, where you can drive through, so you get a little thing.
Talking to your mic.
Does it have the dates on that?
Yeah, it's the 5th of December, and I'm sorry, the 8th of December it's open, it's starting.
Starts the 8th?
Noah, talking to your mic, please.
Oh,
I can't
yeah,
hear you.
I'm sorry. I can't. It's, the chalk walk timing is the 8th, the weekend of the 8th, the 8th through the 10th. It's from 5 to 8 p.m. The first night is a walk around. You don't have to drive through. The other nights, and you can actually make a reservation so that you're going to drive your car and they'll get you right through. About 3,000 or 4,000 people over the weekend will go. But look at the video because it's kind of fun to see what it's all about. So take one.
Take one of each?
One of each. That's all I have, and I'll try and remember to.
5 to 8. Okay. Next after fire is the library.
The library
Turn your
board
mic on.
did meet. Is that on? Yeah. The library board did meet. They reviewed a number of things. One of them is how they determine the books that they purchase. And they also they have so many programs going on right now. In fact, Mitch Albom, if you're a reader, I hope you are, a famous author, is going to be appearing in Laguna Woods. You might want to go online and check out with the Orange County Public Library website, and it's ocpl.org, I think, and find out tremendous speakers and lots of interesting things going on.
Okay. Mosquito and vector.
mosquito and vector control used to have really nice seasons. Now there's really no season just for mosquitoes. And we've had 3 cases of dengue, locally acquired dengue, and one in Laguna Beach, and one in Long Beach, and one in Pasadena. So we have all the mosquitoes here now that it takes to spread disease. Most of the mosquitoes are in North County, and so even when it's cold and it's raining, you should still check your exterior, make sure that you have no water in your saucers. In pots, if you could use a wire brush and scrape it out, because those eggs that a mosquito lays can stay viable for years, even with no water. And then the minute water's back in there again, they come out. So
Can you spray them with bleach? Can you spray them with bleach, your pots?
you could, but it's best to use that brush and get them out, or water fountains, anything that collects water. In fact, I love flowers too. I love bromeliads, but every time we see backyards that are breeding mosquitoes, they're full of bromeliads, and they're beautiful plants, but they hold water in the center, and so there's a little pool of water, and that's plenty sufficient for mosquitoes to breed in. So, and I know you can't just dump out your bromeliad. It's difficult, so I would be careful before, using a lot more of those plants. If you like other plants too, that would be better. So anyway, keep preventing mosquitoes and preventing them from breeding, and I'll have more of a report next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
A new vaccine that appears to be on the market for chikungunya, so that's kind of interesting.
Next
We haven't
item.
talked about that at Vector.
Next item is the toll roads. Just a couple of things. Since they switched to all-electric tolling and no toll booths to pay a cash toll as you go through, they have a lot of extra acreage around around where the tolling stations are. And we have had discussions about what to do with that land. And an idea for the future is such that if Uber ever switches to self-driving cars, they might stage their cars in a place like that, so they'd be ready to respond to calls. Right now, we're just preparing to sign a contract with the city of Irvine to use one of those areas, this one at Tomato Springs, which is the top of the 241, for training, for their driver training and motorcycle training for their officers. And that would be right now only a quarterly event, and it may cause some drivers just slow down and take notice when they see several dozen black and whites all clustered around at the top of the 241. But it's a first step in figuring out what to do with that vacant land. Also on the 241, if you have driven it at speed, you would notice, or on a motorcycle, you would notice some depressions in the roadway surface, which one might call oopsies or oopsie daisies. And they have been repairing those, and the ones that are southbound, I think, have been completed, and the ones that are northbound are still under repair. On Highway 73 by us, there will be some full nighttime closures from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. during December as the Southern California Edison overhead power lines are replaced. That's all I have to say on that. The rest of it can be reported later. We come next to the county watershed. That's yours, Carol?
Yes, I do, and we did have a meeting, and again, troubling reports that come from one group of people seem to feel that they can make the rules for everyone else, and it's really quite a stretch of the imagination. Part of the State Water Board has come. First off, it's a good idea to have goals. If you have no goals, you don't get anywhere. So you need goals, but they have to be realistic. And one group telling another group, again, here we go. These are estimated compliance costs for communities to meet these new conservation programs, and I want to go over why there's a bit of question to even have such a thing. But the city of Anaheim, it would cost them $54 million, not will cost them if we continue. Cost the city of Brea $32 million, Buena Park $56 million, $25 million for the city of Fountain Valley. These are cities, by the way, that have their own water districts. Fullerton, $28 million, $53 for, let me see, maybe that was Fullerton. 18 for the city of Laguna Beach, the Laguna Beach County Water District. They're not a county, but it's in the water district for Laguna Beach. For El Toro Water District, it will cost about $2 million. And the $2 million, remember, when El Toro gets water costs, they pass the water costs on because they're in business to not make a profit, but not to lose money. So that would be money that we would have to pay. They are wanting to tell us whether we can have lawns and where we can have them, and even if we can have them. Now let me talk about why these kinds of decisions made by one group of people for another group of people, and they cover everyone, don't make sense. Because right now, this morning, there was a report that MoDOC is our purchasing agent for us. We don't have a representative on Metropolitan Water, so MoDOC is our representative. They said this morning, is it 26%? They are down 26% on their water sales. Down. What does that mean? They're not selling as much water. If you're not selling as much water, that tells you that people are using less water. So if you have people using less water, and then you're going to apply these 54 million and 18 million and 2 million to water groups, you have to ask yourself, wait a minute, aren't there some unintended consequences here? Because that would mean that we would use less water. If we're gonna comply with all this, we're gonna stop watering our lawns, to stop doing all this, we're not gonna use water. If we don't use water, what did I just tell you about Met? Met is what? Not selling as much water as they intended. So these are some of the problems that we're coming up with, and I think it's time that we need to stop. Either we need to get people who, we do have some people who are political instead of people who are industry people, so there's one issue on it. We have a number of issues here, and so solving this is a little bit complicated. But I think it's time that people better start looking at some of these rules that are being forced to be applied, and according to this, it says preliminary. These numbers are preliminary because they're based on partial data and assumptions that create compounding errors. They exclude costs for compliance with commercial, industrial, and institutional requirements and costs for agencies to maintain compliance. Let's remember, in Southern California has the most sophisticated water system in the world. The state has a very sophisticated, but Southern California is particularly sophisticated. And just recently, another meeting that I attended, this is the most amazing thing that you've ever heard. The Orange County Sanitation District now has a program. This is how fast technology is moving. They have a program that involves, we're very concerned with certain items in the water that we want to remove, and pharmaceuticals are one of those items. PFAS, those are those forever chemicals, and the third one are the bacterials or illnesses that are in the water. Okay, they have a system that they're putting into test, and this system, actually, this is what's amazing about it. It skips over the idea of using anaerobic digesters. That goes away because anaerobic digesters, you wind up with methane. Methane's a very harmful gas, one of the more harmful. So you don't want to do that if you can avoid it. This one uses a totally different system, and it removes more water first from the solids, takes those solids and takes it to a critical heat using heat and pressure that it actually, if you know, remember your chemistry, it breaks down the chemical bonds. So the chemical bonds in the PFAS now become back to their separate units, what do I say, their atomic structure. Okay, it's been broken, the chemical bonds are broken down. Not only did it do that, when it gets finished, they wound up with 400 what do I want to say for power plants? Megawatts. So that it's like adding a power plant. This is a benefit from this system. This is so darn amazing. So the reason I'm tying these together is we're being asked to do things when the technology changed. And the technology, why does MET, you have to ask yourself, why would MET be down 26% in sales? And I don't know this for the fact, because my first question is that everyone's down a certain percentage, or is it spotty? Remember that San Diego built a desalination plant. Desalination plant means that they are now requiring less water from MET. So that has to be figured in there somewhere. We also have in Southern California, and particularly in Orange County, we have lots of recycled water. So once you're recycling water, you're using less water because you're using it again. So if you have these systems, then you have to ask yourself, how can you come up with these numbers? You didn't figure in all the recycled water, because every time El Toro Water, I'm just going to use them because they're a water source, if El Toro Water built a plant to reuse and recycle the water, if they don't do that, what happens to that water? If we don't use it on our lawns, what happens to the water? It's going to go to the ocean. So there's not a lot of logic here, and I keep bringing this up. I think we need to have people who are more thoughtful and are looking at the unintended consequences. So I'd say we had some interesting things that we need to be observing. That's my report.
Thank you. Okay, any comment from the bridge builders?
I'll make an update. They're working on a lot of things. We have this one song, and we're getting 300 singers from all different cultures, all different clubs, and we're having them all come in their native costumes and outfits. It's a song of peace and oneness and lovingness. And the person that wrote the song not only gave his permission to have it used, but he's flying in with his wife from New Jersey. Paul Ortiz from the Village is directing it, along with 2 other people, and they're using the Clubhouse 3. And so the rehearsals are 3 days. They still want people to join. We still need more singers. If you sing well, they'll have you up front. If you sing less well, you can mouth along in the background. But there'll be 3 days of rehearsals where everyone will get to know each other, which is another opportunity for different cultures to meet and talk and greet and get to know each other. They have these wonderful little cards that say from Community Bridge Builders to thank someone that's made an impact on you or said something that made you feel good. Just different ways to connect with people. So that's one thing they're working on. And we're working very hard on our legacy project, the one on ageism, because all of the bias training that we had gotten spoke about every other ism, but except for ageism. And so we're working really hard on that. We've split into 3 different groups, and we're writing about whether it's elder abuse or a demotion or social engagement, successful aging. And so each one will do a 12-minute skit, and it'll be filmed and broadcast here in the village and here in the city, and possibly for use later elsewhere. But so there's a couple of programs that they're working on that just take a lot more work and dedication. So if anyone wants to sing, reach out to Laguna Woods Community Bridge Builders, the Village Bridge Builders, and you'll be added into the group. That's the report from there.
I want to say one more thing in connection with the bridge builders. A lot of people in the community are just really frustrated by the news of the day. And
By the what?
The news of the day.
Oh.
And people feel pretty helpless, like, what can we do about it? And of course, the first thing you can do, you can't achieve peace overseas, but you can work, as Sherry has mentioned, you can work for peace in your community. As Gandhi said, you can be the change you want to see in the world. The old civil rights song said, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Other things you can do, you can contact the president or your elected officials in Washington and tell them what you would like them to accomplish. You can contact the companies in which you are invested and ask them to divest themselves of investments in a manner that will increase leverage and hopefully bring about the conclusion that you want. So there are things you can do to have some influence, and then there are things you can do to start the movement for peace here and not let international insanity infect us here in our own community.
That is a very important feature, the idea of peace here in the community. Not only peace, but the interaction of people, of the Arabs, of Jews, of all people. And that's really what, and I don't know what's happened, what their position, or whether you're taking a position on the Israeli-Hamas matter, but it's real. And we certainly don't want it here like that. And yet I look out there and that's what I see, you know, with the younger generation. We are the older generation, obviously, and are, I think, much more, not laissez-faire, but very conscious of the consequences of what we see going on out there. I don't know.
Okay, you want to comment on this?
Oh, no, not on that. I just had another.
Okay, Carol has another comment, another report or comment that she wants to make.
It's not a comment, it's a report. Is that
Okay.
what you said?
Yeah,
Okay,
we're
I didn't
gonna-
want to, if she wanted to make a comment, I
No,
should
no,
tie
it was,
with.
it was another report.
Okay, well, go ahead.
No, it's on the other comments and reports, so it's the
Oh, okay.
last one.
All right. Do you want me to go ahead, or either
go
way?
ahead.
Okay.
Wait, you-
This report has to do with LAFCO. I attended the LAFCO conference. My first LAFCO conference allowed me to witness that the organization is diverse. LAFCOs were created to help ensure adequate planning when California experienced dramatic growth, could you advance, please, in population and economic development. Following World War II. Did you advance? Okay, okay. Former Governor Edmund Brown, a senior, appointed the Commission on Metropolitan Area Problems in 1959. The Commission's recommendations were introduced in the legislature in 1963, resulting in the creation of LAFCO, local agency formation commissions, in each county except San Francisco, because the city and county were virtually one. Eventually, there was one in every county. Would you advance? LAFCOs are as diverse as the 58 counties LAFCO represents. Would you advance? The conference was held in Monterey. The conference opened very early the first morning with a mobile workshop held at the host city's modest-sized airport. Would you advance? The airport is under the jurisdiction of Monterey LAFCO. The district staff provided transportation to and from their airport. Small group tours of airport operations, presentations regarding issues involved with needed airport expansion, as well as the corresponding challenges. Monterey Airport, as with many others across the nation, is a product less of planning and more of happenstance. Would you advance? The site dates back to the dawn of aviation, when it was barely a short landing strip, later expanding because of our nation's participation in World War I. Reversed by the Great Depression, it was reactivated with the events of December 7, 1941, which cinched America's participation in World War II. Again, the airport was used for military training. Monterey itself includes coastlands, the Santa Lucia Mountains, as well as agricultural lands in the Salinas Valley. As agriculture and tourism continue to have significant influence, corporate flights as well as commercial are important to the area. As mentioned, the site was not the best for a regional airport, but because the historical events precluded I've lost my side. Early long-range planning, a situation many LAFCOs respond to. It was an It was technology with tech. It was an interesting observation of how employment of technology is central, and additionally that collaboration is critical to addressing problems. Would you advance? One significant issue was runway length required by FAA. Extending it was a major challenge as the end of their runway drops off to a channel below. You look at that big slab of concrete. Using current technology, they were able to create an end section, and then by using this special concrete mixture, they created a special pad composed of material that will crumble and hold any large craft that is forced to use it. Filling in the ravine was out of the question, but the built-up area suffices because of the use of the special concrete pad. Added to that is the necessity of moving the many airport buildings to the other side of the runway. Their current location borders a road, and therefore expansion west is not possible. The total reconstruction and demolition of so many buildings is a significant challenge. Finally, there was also the leveling of incoming takeoff and runways, which are at different heights. Returning later that morning and over the following days, we had the opportunity to interact with conference attendees from other regions, learning different member interests and challenges. As a newbie to LAFCO, my takeaways from the conference were positive on several levels, with the representatives from the various LAFCOs, with the respective discussions, and with the absence of any apparent ideology. Additionally, I was pleased to note our county is well represented by Derek McGregor. He's the public commissioner who serves on the Cal LAFCO board. OC LAFCO, which is the one we belong to in our county, isn't sitting on the sidelines. Could you advance? As the conference workshop continued, two very different counties were featured, resolving the same issue. One was a small county with a consolidation issue. The other one was a large county with service area issue. They were two very different counties. Resolving the same issue in a rural milieu can be quite different from puzzling out a resolution in an urban setting, and because their issues were as dissimilar as their answers. Confirming, please advance. One size does not fit all. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Annie.
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I did have another report. Last week, Councilmember Horn and I did attend a roundtable discussion on energy, and it was an invitation that went out to a lot of the OC leadership, OC elected officials. And there was a discussion, an information discussion, and there was discussion included a presentation from Matthew Langer, Chief Operating Officer of Clear Power Alliance, Dr. Kathleen Trishita, UC Irvine Climate Professor and OC Power Authority Vice Chair and Irvine City Council Member. And also there was a presentation by Joe Muscoa, OCPA's interim CEO. And again, it was an information session about energy. Some of the other people in attendance were council members from Irvine, Fountain Valley, Laguna Beach, and Tustin. So basically it was an information session about the new power sources of energy and how things are moving since the big shakeup with the change in staff and everything. So very informative. I went because I was curious about it, and so I did get some information. So it was very informative, and I'm happy that I did attend.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
I would like to report the California Senior Legislature had its annual session recently and came up with our top 10 proposals for seniors here in the state. So I want to read them to you because this could have a big effect on a lot of people's lives. The first one was on a hospital patient discharge summary. These all go according to the master plan that is in California, in the state and in the county. This measure would enact legislation that would require a hospital to standardize the patient discharge summary, including specified information in order to improve the communication and provide continuity of medical care during the patient's transition to the home or another facility. The next one was the Ralph M. Brown, the SP6, Ralph Brown Act, teleconferencing, with the MPA goal Housing for All. This measure would authorize teleconferencing with respect to county-based advisory councils, committees, commissions, and their attendant work groups, committees, and subcommittees established for aging and disability issues in the same manner as it was during the COVID-19 pandemic. AP8 is hospice standards. It goes with the MPA goal of Health Reimagined. This measure would require the state of California to make various reforms relating to hospice, including strengthening hospice standards by requiring inspections every 3 years as specified, requiring the recertification for hospice-enrolled patients to be conducted by at least one independent physician in conjunction with the hospice physician, and adopting recommendations provided in the California State Auditor Report 2021 to 23 to require collaboration between specified state departments to address fraud and abuse identified in the report and protect patients. AP7 is confidential marriage, MPA Goal 3, inclusion and equity, not isolation. This measure would protect elders from abuse by providing a contestability provision for family members to void a confidential marriage due to misrepresentation or abuse within 4 years of the deceased elder's death. SP8 is personal needs allowance, MPA Goal 5, affordable aging. This measure would increase the personal needs allowance from $35 to $50 a month. AP1 is grandparents, caregivers support, MPA Goal 4, caregiving that works. This measure would require the California Department of Aging, in consultation with the Department of Justice, the State Department of Social Services, and stakeholders groups, to conduct a study to examine the issues faced by grandparents who are 60 years of age or older and are the primary caregivers for their grandchildren. SP3 is healthcare for older adults and people with disabilities, MPA Goal 2, Health Reimagined. This measure would authorize a state study for the purpose of designing public policy addressing the development, deployment, and regulation of artificial intelligence in the field of healthcare, particularly in relation to the care of older adults and people with disabilities. SP10 is skilled nursing facilities, end-of-life privacy, MPA Goal 2. This measure would require the administrators of skilled nursing facilities in the state to work with a resident who has been diagnosed as having less than 5 days to live, or with the resident's family to provide sufficient privacy for the dying resident so that the family or clergy or both may be with the resident and provide a dignified death and giving of last rites. AP5 is automated external defibrillators, MPA Goal 2. This measure would require any recreational building, as specified in a senior living community, to maintain an AED on the premises. This measure would also require the legislation would request that the legislation require the entity in charge of the buildings to provide training to employees related to the use of an AED. SP9 is End-of-Life Advanced Directive, MPA Goal 2. This measure would permit an individual who is diagnosed with terminal dementia to make an advance directive requesting aid in dying drugs if at a later date the individual becomes likely to die within 6 months. This would also require that an individual suffering from terminal dementia is not required to self-administer the aid in dying drugs. This measure further proposes that the State Department of Public Health update its annual report on the End-of-Life Option Act to include information related to patients that make these advanced healthcare directives. And we put out one federal proposal for 2024, which is the Federal Personal Needs Allowance, and this proposal would increase the federal minimum personal needs allowance to $50 a month. So those are the top 10 of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other reports of meetings attended or comments that any of the council members wish to make? Okay. We have no closed session today, so this meeting will be adjourned to our next special meeting on December To our next adjourned regular meeting on December 15 at 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon, here at Laguna
That's
Woods,
why I'm confused.
here at Laguna Woods City Hall. Thank you. We are adjourned.